What is Megin? What does this word mean? Where do people get this, and how does it affect me as a heathen? Hello, I'm Burke. I'm your host on another episode of Freeth TV's Core Heathen Concepts, and today we're going to talk about Megin. And you can read more about this in the Heathen Handbook if you would like to later, but right now we're going to dive right into this. So Megin is a word that means might, main, strength, or the force of will. It's directly related to the modern Icelandic verb mega, which means the ability to do something. If you ask, hey, can you do this? Yes, I have the ability to do this. I have the mega, or I have the megin. And so it is also related to other words, might and main. When you hear people talk about, I can do this with my own might and main, that's a very medieval concept. And they had this concept because coming in the Middle Ages, they were fresh out of the Germanic heathen ages. And so this was a holdover that these people who were strong individuals who used their will to affect the world still use this term to describe how they did that. So you can say that Megin is your own personal will, your own personal orlog, as it is able to affect your will in the world. Now, going back again, there are many different definitions of Megin, and they're going to vary on the small points. And the reason that Megin and some of these other words, orlog, that you will encounter seem to vary is because we don't have a textbook definition of these things as they relate to our ancestral heathen faith. Now, there are many dictionaries like the Cleesby Vigfusen Dictionary of Old Norse that will give you background on the word and they'll give you examples, but you have to figure this out from context. And so this is one of the things that we're attempting to do here with the Core Heathen Concept series, is to give you a core to build on and go back and research for you a general idea of these heathen terms that you're going to encounter in your journey in heathenry. Now, as we said, your Megin is your own personal store of orlog, your own might, your own main, your own ability to work your weird in the world, to use your will and your weird to affect things in the real world. So when you go back into the sagas, one idea that you can get from this of it being a thing, a thing that has its own presence, its own almost corporeal being, is that kings and jarls, strong men, were able to lend their Megin to things. And this continued even into Christian times when King Olaf was asked to lend his Megin to an endeavor. And a lot of times you would see the kings or the jarls give men tokens of their authority, of their Megin, in order that other people would know that they had lent their might to that. This is an ancient Indo-European custom, and we see it also with the Greeks and the Romans. The Roman Kerikes, the messengers who carried the caduceus, the staff of Hermes, they were traditionally messengers that were protected by the common law. So they could go from tribe to tribe or city to city or even in between nations bearing this staff, the caduceus of the god, in this case, Hermes, and they would be inviolable. They would be sacred. And so when they traveled with this staff, it was a symbol of the, what we would think of Megin as heathens, of the nation, the city, or the state that sent those people as a messenger. And this also was a thing with the Romans who carried the fasci, which is a bundle of rods. And the Romans had legates, which we still get our word, a diplomatic legation, comes from that Roman tradition. These Roman legates or diplomats would go amongst tribes, cities, nations, even in the German lands, and carry these rods, these fasci, before them as symbols of Rome's power or of Rome's Megin. And you can go research more on that about the Quirinus, the Senatus Publius Quirinus Romanus, the SBQR. You see that a lot with tattoos and things. That was what was represented by these Roman lictors and legates when they carried the fasces. And so this concept comes down to us today with our present day law enforcement when they carry a badge that is their authority to act on the will of the people. So that tradition of carrying a badge by officers of the law or other state officials is a direct descendant of the kings and jarls of the Germanic lands lending their might and main, their Megin, if you will, and the tokens of that representation. Now, that's very obviously been distorted in modern days, but that is where this idea comes from. So, returning back to that, your Megin is your own personal store of weird that's affected by your orlog and also what you put down into your tree. And so your Megin is your ability to use your weird and the weird collectively of others, your reputation, if you will, to affect things in the real world. And so these concepts are going to interact with each other. We've already talked about orlog, weird. Now we're talking about the Megin. And as we go into the parts of the soul, you will begin to see how these things interact with each other. Megin can be used in both small and large endeavors. We can use it in our personal life or we can use it in our public life. One example that I like to use of my Megin in my personal life is in weightlifting or endurance training and running. And so when I first started lifting weights, I was not able to lift very much, to say the least. And I used to see guys in the gym who would put, they're warming up at 135 and then they start repping up to 225, which is 4 big plates on the bar. And it was very impressive to me. And I was like, I want to be able to do that. I want to be able to move that weight in the real world with ease. And so I set myself my will to do that. And I had to learn that, hey, there is a process to this, that once I can overcome the physical act of lifting weights, learning how to do it, I can use my will. And if you've ever lifted heavy, you know when you're going for those things, there are times when you may be able to do this and you may not be able to do this. For instance, you might not be able to complete a set that you wanted to complete, or you might not be able to lift heavy to a specific weight, and yet not much has changed about your body. And our ancestors would say that is a measure of your Megin, that your Megin is not up to its potential. And so when our Megin is up to its potential, we can lift more. And to me, it very much came into effect the most when I was learning how to run and do distance running. And I did that as part of a holistic thing with a group of guys I was training with, and we would push each other. And I wanted to excel, just like with the weightlifting, I wanted to excel at this. And so I pushed myself to do this. And I learned that, hey, when I push through, my body is capable of doing this if my mind, my Megin, allows me to express my might and main in this real world and achieve those things. In a more public sense, the Megin comes through when you set yourself goals and you push yourself and use your Megin to achieve those goals. So as an example of how this would work in a more public sense, I will expand this to say that you can have Megin of groups, Megin of individuals. And so here in Texas, there were a group of kindreds, and we wanted to have a nice big Yule event that people could come to. And so we had to create that. We had to work and we had to lend our Megin to that because nobody else was going to do that for us. And so those of us who pitched in on this and did these things, we lent our collective Megin to these endeavors. And we have had success with that. And it's grown and it has just been a huge success and a great thing where the people in the community all over Texas and other states can come and experience the free and the joy of celebrating Yule together with other heathens. And so this is an example of using collective Megin for a good and positive purpose in the real world, achieving those goals. And so I hope that this video has brought you a better understanding of the idea of Megin and how you can use your Megin, how you can build your own weird and take advantage of that to achieve your own goals, both personal and public, on the small scale and on the large scale in the real world. So again, if you like this video, subscribe to the channel, give us a like, leave a comment if you have any criticism or any ideas for future videos. And as we say down here in Texas, skull, y'all.